Hi, everyone. Welcome, Mary. Thank you for the kind introduction. And I'm very happy to be to introduce our three panelists today, good friends and colleagues from the very small startup ecosystem, existing but small. Okay, so first off, I would like to introduce Mike Haralambous, which is the CEO of Thridium. He's a passionate entrepreneur based out of London, worked in many sectors ranging from retail to food and beverage and tourism and telecoms. So prior to being the CEO of Thridium, which is like, I think the fourth already startup, he already had 2 successful exits. So he will be wearing multiple hats, but I would believe that the first hat I will be referring to was like the entrepreneur seeking for investment. Our second panelist is Pavlos Yosifidis, which is the owner CEO of PMP Business Angels, but also a passionate investor. He was one of the first in Cyprus that already started a company that was about investment. It was about raising funds for small startups and SMEs. He is also been active for so long that he can tell a very, very big story about how people actually started from getting some funds and eventually even exiting and getting listed and using all types of financial instruments, but also using a hat of a mentor and a collaborator with a lot of startups. And last but not least, Stelios, that also wears a lot of hats, but I think I'm going to pick not the accountant one, but I will pick the one of Chrysalis Lip, which is like the first major accelerator we have in Cyprus, and also very concentrated in clean tech, but also a professor in the Cyprus University of Technology, today with the role of the accelerator. So we have our entrepreneur, we have our investor, and then we have what bridges the gap between the two, let's say. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Hi, Andrea. Pleasure.
Okay, so I'm gonna start off with a bit of, let's say, housekeeping for everyone that is actually participating and following either from Facebook or from AirMeet right now. We're gonna have a discussion that I'm gonna be moderating. Everybody, as Mario said, can be sending their questions. Please, if you have a specific question for a specific speaker, address it to them so eventually we would know. And I will be skipping questions that actually the answer already has been, let's say, answered already. So the way we're shaping this discussion today, it's like the path to actually being a successful entrepreneur. And our experience so far, we know that it's not about the idea, it's the execution. But all the journey of that execution is very long, is very steep most of the times, and it needs backup and support. So I'm gonna start with Mike to give me his first try on how to start, on how you started your first try, let's say your first startup, and at which point you thought that it was about time for you to get investment. The floor is yours.
Thank you. It's mounting pressure to be opening discussion point, but yeah, I mean, I think I'm one of those occasions that I never fully had a corporate background before diving into the startup scene. So as soon as I graduated from my master's degree, and yes, I had a few internships here and there, I always felt that I was ready to do something on my own. Now, this is a huge mistake. But you know, that's how I felt, so I got cracked on and
no judgment.
No judgment. To start something with minimum experience at a young age, I think it's very challenging because you essentially drop literally in the middle of the ocean. You have to swim around. And you have no idea. Everything is quite new for you, and all the people around you, even though they seem kind of sympathetic towards you, they don't really care about what you're doing. They don't even understand what you're saying to them. So they have already 1,000 other problems on top of their mind. So it's not easy for you to find some sort of guidance and start pushing towards the right direction. So there's a lot of mistakes, a lot of time wasting, but then again, you're so young, you have zero responsibilities, you just keep pushing. I think it took us, I mean, one very important mistake we've done since day one, and I would highlight that for everyone that wants to start something, is that we began a company with the goal in mind to fundraise. And fundraise is not the essence of a company. When you build a company, you're building the pillars of a mission that you want to bring and establish, and probably even bring a change, or because you found a nice business model that can give you cash fast, because there's a different ways in approaching businesses. To start a company with your primary goal to raise money, that's a recipe for disaster and failure, because you don't have enough motivation. It's your first time talking to investors. Investors are seeing 100 different companies every day. You're probably the least interesting at that time. You have zero credibility, zero equity, brand equity as a founder in the game, so nobody will turn an eye on you. So, excuse my French, but it's a shit show anarchy. And we found out in the hard way. And we had a lot of drawbacks and before we become more mature. So ultimately,
did anybody give you money though in that first try?
Yes, but that was because I was extremely persistent, and that's because I tapped into the friends and family ecosystem to do that. And that's how it happened, but it happened again with the hard way. And then when they actually gave me money, I felt so not ashamed of, like, damn, I just got money from a person that really believed in me, in what I told him, but I actually have no clue what I'm doing and how I'm going to use that money to achieve what I'm doing. So it was an additional layer of pressure. Then, because we had the money and because we were persistent, and a key thing about someone that wants to be an entrepreneur is the fact that they always self-motivated and they always find a solution. We managed to use that small amount of money we receive to grow and grow and grow and grow. But it's not easy, and I think the factor of luck came in nicely for us at the very, very early stage of the company.
That's true, and timing, of course. So now, taking what you said, I want to jump to Pavlos from the other side, from a guy that probably 1,000 mics stood in front and said, okay, Pablo, we want you to invest in our companies. So Pablo, how does it feel from the investor side, let's say, when you have all these passionate entrepreneurs like Mike that maybe have zero experience in running a company? How does it feel for them to ask for money and getting rejected or not rejected? And what's the trick about that?
Okay. First of all, Mike, very, very true stories you just said. I am in Cyprus, okay? So in Cyprus, I am standing sometimes on the investor side, but I was lucky to stand on the side of the startup young Cypriot entrepreneurs and try to coach them and mentoring them and show them the way to believe to themselves and look to their eyes that they want to make it, they believe they can make it, and then coach them. Now let's go to the investors side and seeing people presenting to you many brilliant ideas and many creative, innovative ideas for many different products or markets. I can see many Mike's story taking place in the old office 15 years ago, that they're passionate, they want to make it, but they don't have actually the correct either plan or coaching behind or management of their ideas. So this is one of the disadvantages sometimes comes when you present your project to an investor. When you go to present to an investor, you must be ready, you must be mature, not only as a person, not only the idea, but the whole package we call, the whole package. Whole package is a person that believes to himself, the knowledge and the business environment that he can understand, and the steps he will have to follow in order for all this to make value for the investor and for himself. So there is many things that an investor looks at that, believe me, the young entrepreneurs may have no idea what is behind the mind of the investor.
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, the investor also will look at numbers and risks. Okay.
That's true. And that's why now I want to invite Stelios to jump in as Stelios. I'm gonna call you the middleman. I know you're not the middleman in this situation, but this is the way I kind of wanted to bring into the discussion. First of all, like with the what is the difference between an accelerator and an incubator, but also if the investor needs somebody more prepared, and then Mike is passionate but unprepared, the role of an accelerator for a startup and why it is important to go through it before you actually pitch in front of a real investor and ask for money.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Andrea, for the question. It's not exactly the middleman, but it's a good reality check, especially for young people or not so young with ideas. We've actually came through what is the value proposition of what we wanted to do, and back in 2011, while I was discussing with my co-founder Alex Haralambidis, we were thinking of something that would look like a competition, like a university competition, because we were thinking about the pyramid scheme of academia, which means you get a lot of PhDs that go to another university to become lecturers and become academics to create. And what we realized, there were a lot of people who thought they had something. They thought that the something that they've created in a lab or in a computer code, it was something that everybody was interested to buy. And because they did it and they put a lot of time in it, it was valuable. And as Pavlos has said, most of these people have no idea what is the value proposition, why someone who had money and had hard-earned money would like to give them to them to do something that they didn't even know what to do, because it's also the other thing. A lot of these people would cost how much money they would need to scale a company, but essentially it's a wishful thinking. It's money they would like to have because they thought of that number. So what an accelerator does compared to an incubator is that we break these people down in a structured program. We try to make them understand what is valuable in their idea or in their product or in their process, because some of the times they have a process that they think is a product and it's not, or at least it's a product with no value proposition. And then in a very structured way, and while talking to them and then giving them some training and mentoring and coaching, prepare them to go and speak to an investor. And the reality is, especially for, I mean, I mostly work with clean tech startups, so we don't really deal with coders that would create marketing stuff, or we haven't worked as much. And with clean tech startups, that gap from TRL 2 or 3, that is usually, this is a technology readiness level, which is usually at the point of finishing their PhD, to go to 7, 8, or 9, that they become investable opportunities. It could be a long way. So we've been operating since 2014, really, and it wasn't until the last 2 or 3 years that we had startups that completed all the 3 stages of what Chrysalis Leap does, to be able to talk to investors and actually do some Series A funding rounds. When these people first came to Chrysalis Leap in 2014, they thought they would do a 10-minute pitch and then get some millions from interested investors. And we made sure that they knew this wasn't the right way.
Okay. So what is the difference of Chrysalis as an accelerator compared to, let's say, a classical incubator that it's...
Oh, we don't
let's keep it agnostic. Let's keep it agnostic.
I sort of forgot to mention the difference. As an accelerator, we are a lot more agile. We work with the startups, but we're not responsible to house them in. We don't give them infrastructure. So some startup could be in an incubator and being accelerated by someone else as well. Mm-hmm. We could work, and we have worked in the past with incubators where we've trained their startups, but at least for the early stages, we don't take equity. Where our services being valuable to their clients or them to train startups, and we only Chrysalis would only take equity post that stage, post that stage 3, where these startups would we would help them. We will work with them and make them let's say palatable to investors.
Okay. Thank you, Stelio. So now that we've established kind of the difference, I want to go back to Mike and ask, in any of the efforts you have done, founding startups and exiting and stuff, have you ever been in an accelerator or an incubator?
Yeah, so I'll take the story of our most recent startup, basically. Frenzy, which then merged with another company and became Freedom. So we primarily started our funding journey through an accelerator in London. It was called Collider. It is called Collider. Now, at the time when we joined, we felt, oh my God, this is great for us. Great PR. We got 100K in funding. We're gonna start having all these great networks, and so many people started coming in. Doing different mentorships and wanting to be our advisors, and it's going to be great. And 2 weeks down the line, this momentum kind of like wore off, and that was not because of us, just because usually accelerators are doing a great job in PR and building that hype, and then when they actually have to have that hands-on approach, that actual execution starts deteriorating. And that's nothing to do with all accelerators, but most of the accelerators are like that. So we participated. It was good because we got funding. It was good as well because due to our perseverance, due to our non-stop energy of pushing and trying to connect the dots, we got some interesting leads out of that accelerator. I remember we got a few of our first projects with the Telegraph and Wall Street Journal through that accelerator, and we also booked a client, I think it was TUI, which was good, but again, this was done through our efforts, and we didn't receive a lot of push internally from the accelerator. Then, after we kind of graduated from that accelerator and we started growing and we started receiving our seed funding, and now we are at the pre-Series A funding. We're almost going to close our Series A round in the next couple of months. Having that accelerator in our cap table, it's a pain in the ass. And I'll tell you why. Because these guys, they either stop caring too much about the accelerator as a whole. Some of those guys that used to have the right of signature and used to be the power attorneys for our company, they're on holidays, or they had another good exit and they're somewhere in Barbados, or they're just not easy to reach. And every time we need to have a new round, when we need to raise capital, we need to have their signature on the shareholding agreements to release the issue of new shares and receive the funding, it takes forever. So I remember in Christmas, we were about to finalize our pre-Series A round, and it took us 1 month for them to sign the shareholding agreement. And you can imagine there's a risk in the cooling off period if you don't get the investors to invest straight away, you know. At any time, I'd say, you know, guys, we don't care. You know, we have another 10 opportunities. We want to invest in them. You guys are taking forever. Goodbye. So for us, sometimes accelerators prove to be a risky task. But again, not all of them are like that. It just depends if you find the right people. Again, timing is always crucial when that is happening. Yeah, I would say for any startup that wants to participate in accelerators, they also need to do their due diligence first before they accept to go, and not just wait for the accelerator to do a due diligence on them.
Okay, because I wanted to ask, like, if there is a good tip, if it's, let's say, the way you choose the accelerator is about what they offer, let's say, in terms of money or deals, or if it's based somewhere, or is it more about checking out the background of the people and having maybe a meeting with them before participating?
We had experiences with accelerators in multiple countries before we actually took our decision, which proven to be not that great, but whatever. You know? So we've spoken with accelerators in close to minuscule. The equity which they asked was ridiculous versus the value that they could provide in the long term. And then same kind of experience we felt that we extracted from the Greek accelerator ecosystem too. Because of language and lifestyle barriers. And then we've chosen the UK basically because we've seen the benchmarks, and benchmarks say that any company that starts off from London, they have a higher chance of surviving and being commonly accepted within the VC ecosystem. And why not push them to become a unicorn? Those are numbers. It's not me saying that. And at the same time, being in London, you're just in a hotbed of opportunities constantly, whether you're in fintech, whether you are in ad tech.
It's important, like the location is important.
Yeah. So once we decided the location for us was London, we had to choose between 3 accelerators. And we went with the one that had the best equilibrium between funding and equity, because you know, we were always a bit stringent with our equity. So for us, we didn't want to just give out equity just like that. But it was also important not to overvalue ourselves, not to also raise at a very low valuation, because each side hidden its own risk. If you overvalue, then you risk of disinvesting when you go into the next round if you don't grow as fast as you want to. But also, if you give too much equity, then it might come back and bite your ass in the long run. So that the equilibrium between funding and equity was key, but also what kind of commercial networking introductions we were to receive. And those were the 2 parameters we evaluated based on our decision.
I believe that those were the better tips that can actually help everyone understand on how to pick, let's say, a partner in this journey. But then this journey brings you again in front of Pavlos. So Pavlos, do you ever see actually like a great difference between, let's say, startups like that they have been in an accelerator or have been incubated somewhere when they pitch to you, compared to, let's say, people that they're not so experienced, but of course they have a great idea and they're a bit early stage? So do you see any difference in the value, let's say, proposition of a startup?
This is a key question. Thank you very much for addressing that. Especially, I'm going to speak about the situation in Cyprus, okay, and the experience we had in Cyprus, because Mike is in the big London boys with, you know, different standards, and you said it very nice. I will try to answer it very honestly and clearly. The difference is of a student in the first class of primary school with the student ready to finish Lyceum. This is the big difference. When I speak with startups, they have only by themselves their idea, they believe, Stelio said it very nice before, they believe they have a value proposition, they believe they will fly, they are sure, but they are not mature the way we see maturity as those going through an incubator or accelerator. Those, when they come in front of us to present, they have a big difference. We call it in their maturity, not maturity only as entrepreneurs, the proposition maturity, the processes, the business modeling maturity, all of this, we call it, is more mature startup than the one comes and present us their own idea. So I would say it's a big difference. And believe me, what I say to all the young people that I try to help, it's always follow a path, have a mentor, have a coach, find an incubator or accelerator, go through all these stages to mature your proposition and have a value proposition so you can face the investor at the end of the day and be, ready to go to the market, because the investor will put his money when he will feel you're mature to go to the market and start getting profits. It's so simple.
Like an additional question on that, because you raised the issue, like, do you believe that a startup having a great mentor, let's say, that might have been just a friendly face as a mentor, or even like an early stage startup investor, like an angel, let's say, do you think that they can actually skip that step of being incubated or accelerated by having a great mentor, or is it everything is kind of part of the mix?
I will change my hat now, and I will go to the hat as a coach of young entrepreneurs in Cyprus. Guys, it depends on which sector you are as well. It's different when you're in fintech sector. For a startup that is a chef, young chef, and he has the vision to open his, a unique restaurant with a unique concept. There are two different markets. So yes, I have the experience with young entrepreneurs in Cyprus the last 20 years, that they followed basic seminars, basic coaching to understand what business is all about, to mature their ideas, put creativity in, believe in themselves, balance their financials and their business plan, and skipping all those, big steps, opening a restaurant or a bar with a creative concept and be successful, okay? But I cannot see this happening in some other sectors. And I say, let's say technology, software sectors, fintech companies, or some other sectors, they need harder work, and the road is maybe more kilometers than the other one. So it's not black and white, it's not a standard formula for everything. All depends at the end of the day in which country you are, what sector you want to invest, to do your dreams. And some sectors need some basic coaching, basic understanding, but all of them, at the end of the day, you must know your value proposition. Either you open a small restaurant and you're a chef, you have to go through the coaching to understand the business environment, to understand how to manage a company, to understand what is your real business model, to understand all those things. On the other side, as Stelio said it before, the cases he's accelerating, they needed 6, 7, 8 years to reach the end of the value proposition. So that's the answer I can say from my experience.
Okay. So Stelio's nodding when we started the discussion with the mentoring. And I do believe that also by experience and by having known Chrysalis Leap from its inception, basically, that I know that like for you guys, accelerating, but also mentoring kind of comes hand in hand. And I know how much involved you are. So the question is like, basing what Mike mentioned on how to pick a great accelerator, which is like the value proposition for the accelerator and for the startup mutually. And then knowing the Chrysalis Leap, let's say, path all these years of being like putting us on the map for clean tech. So how did you guys make it happen? How did you manage to create an accelerator that somebody would pick you to come in Cyprus to be accelerated for that topic instead of being abroad, when Mike mentioned already that in other sectors, besides, let's say, clean tech, we have almost, let's say, zero offering, or the offering is a bit not good. I'm not going to say ridiculous, which is. So let's say, so we don't have actually many. So how did this happen, Stelio? Like what are the, let's say, parameters that came together to create this nice offering for startups?
Serendipity. Serendipity. It's, usually when you write proposals and you write, oh, I'm going to work with a multidisciplinary team and to look at these interesting problems. It actually happened to us. So it was, well, as I said, the initial team was 7 people, none of us having the same background, from different technical to financial to business coaching to business consulting to marketing to psychology to law. And we went through several iterations. Most of the times people would see like an upward, an increasing, let's say, development in the accelerator. But there were also some shortfalls. We also made value proposition, let's say, designs and prototypes for programs that we thought people would want them, and they failed. And we had to pull the plug and kill our baby. And we've done it at least, if I remember, at least 3 times. And we had to be honest in front of ourselves, because we thought that this would be something that people would be interested, people would want to pay. And Mike has said before that sometimes you find the offering of an accelerator as being too much for you as an entrepreneur, and depending on your industry, it could be too much. So the accelerator, or an accelerator program, effectively, it's not a school, it's not a university, it's not a business school. It could be the backbone of a business school. You hear some of the same lingo you would get now in a business school, because they are also now, turning toward taking your money to make you a startupper. Before it was taking your money to make you a CEO, now it's a startupper. So they are also changing. Mm-hmm. But what it offers is effectively a structured time, because as an entrepreneur who will be mopping the floor and then taking calls with investors or angels, and also writing the blog and also writing a bit of code, you don't have that much structure in your life. The acceleration program is that structure in your life that will help you put these pieces together and make you see and test business models. We start, when we're talking about these people with the early ideas, the PhD students that just graduate, we just make them see in one sentence what is their deal, what they are trying to sell, to whom, for how much. You can't believe how difficult this is. It might take people 10 minutes just to say that. Mm-hmm. And then we make them test their hypothesis on whether this value proposition actually has some value to some people, and they have to go out and do interviews and talk to people who would buy and try and get letters of intent, not letters of support, letters of intent. Mm-hmm. And then we try and sell. And when they come back, we go and tell them, okay, try something else now, and find your real market. And because we've been doing it for a long time, we learn from them, and we also evolve our offerings. As I said, we've been working with clean tech, which is a lot slower than what Mike would describe. And actually, what you described, Mike, it reminds me of the problems we would have at university, where we would wait for someone from the administration to sign something and they're on leave and nobody's replacing them. At Chrysalis Leap, you would not face that problem, because on the other hand, this is the good of Cyprus, is because we're few, you don't have that much selection, but if you find the right acceleration, then you are almost in bed. I mean, we've taken some of our startups to an event in New York, and the guys that went, the startups, we all stayed in the same place, in the same B&B. And we were training in a park in the Netherlands, just to get them to pitch and try to, as we call it, give them some tough love. So it can get a lot more personal, and it doesn't have to be about money. So if you are in clean tech or health tech, things that would require a lot of money, not just manpower, that you can give some coders some equity to stay around and work and put some sweat. There are lots of funding opportunities that is free money, it's taxpayers' money. All these are, especially the research programs, even in Cyprus now, also the European grants, they're a lot more tuned into turning research into commercial products. And if you want to increase those steps to go to TRL 3 and TRL 4 and TRL 5, you can try and work with your acceleration program to target this sort of funds, so that your acceleration program doesn't really invest in you like, I'll give you 10,000 cash and then I will try and suck as much equity from you. Actually, for our 3 stages, we don't take any equity, because these people have nothing until they finish and they cannot talk to investors. So if I try to strangle them and take 10% of them just to be on the safe side, they will never materialize and I will never get anything. So we'll let them work. And if they want to stick around because they have this Stockholm syndrome afterwards, then from that consulting, they actually give a small cut. That's how it works.
I agree with you on all the points. It's just to rephrase a bit my thinking around accelerators. First of all, we were unlucky not to come across you guys when we were discussing with accelerators in Cyprus. I don't want to name other accelerators we've seen, but I think there are not so many, so you can understand which ones I'm pinpointing. But anyway, point being is that the fundamental structural problem between accelerators and startups is that you have so many different characters and personalities from entrepreneurs coming into the accelerators. And there's a huge discrepancy between how they perceive a situation, right? So everyone can see this I'm not going to promote it, but everyone can see this cup, right? Some of you might say, oh my God, this is a black cup, it's stainless and like that. Others will say, okay, this is just a cup, I don't care, I might as well just have a paper cup, whatever. The thing is, an entrepreneur will sit in a completely different scope from an accelerator. And there's always a slowdown between how fast an entrepreneur might want to go to a specific direction and how an accelerator will allow them to go. So a bit of discrepancy between how they perceive situations. That's the core fundamental issue. And then the other problem is that actually accelerators are created with a good intention. They want to really help, and that's a given. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist. You spend a lot of times coaching people, and that's times that you need to also be compensated for. It's your life, it's your personal time that you devote. But again, if the entrepreneur is not willing to sit down and listen, or if the entrepreneur is thinking 10,000 different things and he's just not there ready to grasp what you're saying, it doesn't mean that you're wrong, but also it means that there's no good communication between the two, and that's where things become become faulty. That's the main point. And then at some point, the entrepreneurs will feel, oh my God, I just given 8%, let's say, of my company to these guys, and for what? But in reality, those guys are trying to help. It's just the entrepreneur doesn't perceive it that way. Or vice versa. You know, you guys will think, oh my God, you know, I'm wasting my time with this guy. He doesn't listen to me. But in reality, that guy is already doing 10,000 things at the same time. And that's the nature of an entrepreneur when they start. So either accelerators need to refine the way that they approach these kind of relationships with founders, or they just need to not be so excited and rush to grasp startups from so early on the journey, and just maybe they might add more value to them when they mature more, as Pablo said before. So not get them exactly when they are in a pre-product or pre-revenue or just an idea, because at the idea phase, that's where you risk to really
it's a make it or break it. It's a make it or break it situation.
Yes. So I think they need to really first go dive in, have a few sucker punches from the market, and then naturally they will go into an accelerator after they have some experience. Because otherwise,
yeah, I would only agree on your industry. If you are into the digital marketing, if you are working on a prototype that you might need to spend 100K to keep a patent or buy that machine that you need for crystallography, then you need some structure and you need someone to foot that bill. It won't be the accelerator, but the accelerator would give that scientist or engineer those few business skills to write a decent enough proposal to someone to pay that.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. So you have to be, there are accelerators, and even for your type of stuff, I mean, you can go to Y Combinator, and effectively you will see someone once every Tuesday for some pizza who will tell you 3 things, and you're supposed to take them, understand what you understand, and keep running.
But yeah,
what we do, it's a lot different. And on the other hand,
absolutely,
we take 10 to 15, especially early stage, it's 10 to 15. If we get 4 to get to stage 2, that's a great success.
Usually it's a great number. Okay,
so
I don't wait. Yeah. I don't wanna.
Sorry for
no. It was good. It was helpful, because actually I don't want to deviate from actually making the audience understand. And it was a good demonstration actually between a startup and an accelerator and all the conversations that need to be done. But I wanna kind of pass the ball to Pavlos now, because I want to start infusing questions from the audience. Okay, and there is a question that is super specific, but I'm going to frame it a bit more, let's say, openly. So is an investor sometimes fixated in certain things they want to invest in, or are they feeling more comfortable with the industry? Or let's say, as our audience here is asking, prefer B2B platforms than B2C, and so that, but let's not focus on just the B2B or B2C, but let's say our investors, let's say, kind of wired to feel that they are inclined towards specific types of projects, let's say, or startups.
Okay, that's a very good question as well. Every investor of every fund that invests has its own profile of investment. What we mean by profile of investment? We have the investment policy, and then we choose the sectors maybe that we want to invest. That's the one thing. So, and that you're going to see it in many funds investing. Some they invest only in fintech, some they invest only in Horeca, let's say, some they invest in whatever is the industry they choose to invest. Okay, so this is one basic thing. The second thing that we use is when we try as a fund to invest in any company that is mature, of course, and has a value proposition, we try to be not a sleeping investor. What do we mean? We want to be active investors. We try to make synergies. We try to make network with those organizations that we invest. We try to help them grow more. So some funds are just sleeping investors. What we say sleeping investors mean they're just giving the money. At the end of the year, they see how good the investment was, or how bad, or how great even is the investment. Some other funds are trying to be active investors. They try to create synergies with the company that they invest. They try to make deals with the company. They try to push more clients, more networking. So all this depends on the profile of the fund, many times on how big is the fund. If it's a big private equity fund, maybe it's different, the philosophy and the approach. We are a small Cyprus regulated fund, and we try to put this in the equation. We know the Cyprus market. We know there is not a solid ecosystem yet. There is a small, as we said before, ecosystem that is hopefully growing, and I hope in the next 10 years will be, a European oriented ecosystem for startups. But since we're in Cyprus, we try as investors to have the philosophy I said before. We know the sectors of the economy, the markets that we want to invest first, and second, we want to invest not to be a sleeping investor, to help them grow even more.
Okay.
I don't know if I answer you. I don't know if I answer you.
Yeah, because now I want to ask Mike from the other perspective. Is your choice of reaching out and pitching to investors based on just your sector, their investment profile, or you would also reach out to funds that are a bit more agnostic? What is in your experience so far?
Look, I mean, we are a B2B platform, right? So I think it lies within the tier, the one aspect of the question. Again, fundraising can be a 24/7 job for a CEO or the relevant person of fundraising. And we need to understand that we're not building a company to fundraise, we're building a company. So we cannot waste too much time with investors, especially with investors that we know already that it's not destined to happen anything. So what we do is that we start building a spreadsheet of different investors with different checklists to see which ones filter best our checklist. So we see which ones invest in seed round or pre-seed round or Series A, what is the minimum revenue or minimum MRR thereafter, are they sector agnostic, do they have similar companies in their portfolio? If they do, you already know it's tough for you to tap into them because they might have problems with their investment remit. And then you start seeing which of these investors you have someone that connect you with them. Because if you start going and knocking and just sending cold emails, chances are nobody's going to get back to you anyway. Because investors, again, they're also human beings and they value their time and they don't want to just randomly respond to someone that they don't know. They'd rather have some sort of warm introduction from a person that they trust before they engage with a founder, so that they know it's not a time waster for them either. So these are the key parameters that we do when we build our pipeline for which investors to tap into, essentially. And regions are not so much of an issue. We are a London-based company and we have investors from the States, from Germany, from London, from Cyprus, actually. So it doesn't matter. It's all about chemistry at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, the world is your oyster when it gets to money.
Exactly.
Okay, so Stelio, because you are also the one that it needs to kind of log out a bit more earlier than the other panelists, I wanted your final question to be, as an accelerator, have you, like throughout these years, let's say, prepared a kind of a list of possible investors for the startups of your industry, that once they get to that stage 3, 4, and they're ready, that you kind of create a deal flow for them? Or is it up to your, let's say, accelerated startups to kind of understand to whom they want to pitch and then you help them out? Is it a win-win situation, like for some people?
Well, it's actually both. I mean, nowadays we do have, I know that Chrysalis Leap has a few agreements with some funds from Cyprus and also abroad to present startups when they complete their final series. We have at least one cooperation with a New York-based fund, at least one in Cyprus and one now in Germany. We've also now starting to going into a more themed, creating a themed branch around maritime startups and decarbonized maritime startups and services and innovative services. So I know Alex is managing that that venture, and it has been bringing in some interested parties that are very, very keen to see this happening. But yeah, as I said, if I would say something, if you are in a very fast-pacing market and industry, marketing, San Francisco, London, Berlin, Amsterdam, or the Nordics, because that's where all your competitors are, and that's where your market is. And there is also a lot of metropolitan access from these places. If you are working on a particular theme that's a lot more slow and you would need more support, because you'd be a scientist, you will not be, I mean, in Israel, I remember we were telling us, like, until a few years back, people would not go to the big unis to do a computer science. They would do a 2-year coding course so that they would do a digital marketing startup, because they would only need the skills, the tools to do that. If you are working, if you are that kind of market, that be in a hub where there are money, because you will need them fast. Mm-hmm. If you are coming from a science background or engineering background, that you would need a lot of support, that it's not just hands coding on a keyboard. And I'm not saying that in a demeaning way. It's that you would need some money to do other stuff, licensing, patenting. If you're in health, you'd probably need to do clinical trials. You might get a lot of money, like millions, before you find out that you have failed. So that makes sure you work with that knows the industry a lot better and will support you. And you might end up working with a corporate in the end. So you might need to exit because nobody will trust. I mean, you see, the vaccine, if we're talking about the vaccines, I mean, everybody talks about Pfizer. It was a small company that had to be bought by Pfizer so that it could do the trial, so that it could sell. No one would trust two people with lab coats that never done business to produce billions of vaccines. Would you?
And on this very high, like, relevant note of COVID, I want to thank you, Stelio, for your time. I know that you are time strained, so I think you're on the dot at 7. But Pablo and Mike, I want to engage you a bit more, because I have like one follow-up and one very, thank you, Stelio. Have a lovely evening. I have 2 questions that are actually super important for me to hear both of your perspective. So the one is a follow-up for the, let's say, investor profile. So the follow-up is, let's say, if it's wise for a founder to decline an investor, especially if the investor is on board. So I want to hear Pablo's side as an investor, and then I want to hear you, Mike, first of all, if you had that experience. And then I want to engage also with another question that is about, where do you all guys come in the process of a startup, just to kind of wrap all the conversation up. So Pablo, the floor is yours.
Okay, I will be honest with Panagiotis. Panagiotis, I will be honest. I'm not first of all, I'm not a standardized investor. So, and at the same time, I coach people to grow up their ideas. So I try to be on both sides and understand both sides. Honestly, if you are a startup and if you're the entrepreneur and you have your vision and you have your strategy and you have an investor that it goes to the other way and creates a problem, and you want to go to the moon, but he wants to go to Limassol, so you're moving into extreme different directions, or your philosophy is different than his philosophy, or if you have no synergies at all, my advice is to make him sleeping investor. Try not to have him in your daily things and on your head and take your mind out of what you want to do, or buy his shares if you can. So because you said even if the investor is on board, if he's on board and you have no synergies and you're going to different directions, this is taking you nowhere, believe me. So either he has to become sleeping investor, show him just the result and you follow your path, or you have to buy his share. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And we're talking about early stage investors. You're not yet a public company, then you have other things, corporate governance, board of directors, strategic plans. We're talking about the startups that a small investor or someone get in to help you, and then you find out that, oh my God, what I'm doing, I'm going out of my vision, out of what I was, then this is not a good recipe. So that's my honest answer to it.
Okay.
I don't know if Mike agrees with that, but
look, there's no right or wrong. From our experience, and I'm only going to talk about me personally. Maybe I can relate with some of the people in the audience or not. But at the end of the day, you have two reasons why you want to have investors in your company. One, because you need the cash at any cost. You really need that cash. So you don't care who's going to give you that cash. You just need that cash. Or you want to have people that, because as a founder, you understand what your limitations are. Maybe your limitations are to unlock specific markets, specific industries. Maybe you need people to guide you on the talent acquisition. Maybe you need people to guide you on the strategy. Maybe you're thinking, what should I do with my company? Should I expand now, later? Maybe you need people to advise on the product roadmap even. So depending on what your needs are, you will know exactly what kind of investor you're after. If it's just money you're after, then honestly, you can sell whatever you want, you can say whatever you want, get their money and disappear, and just maintain a respectful relationship with them, update them every month, maybe answer an email when they send you, or call them, or respond to them anytime they have a question. But essentially, you have your own path, you have your own strategy, and you follow it, and you don't listen to anything that they have to say because you don't care. However, if it's the latter, if you really want someone to come in, not just for the money, then again, it all boils down to chemistry. I mean, with our investors, we go for surfing, we go for steaks, they even invite us to their wives' birthday parties, that's how much they value us. Because we've built a human relationship with them, and it's not just because of the money. They respect what we do, we respect their input, and they also know that if we do well, they're going to live happily ever after anyway. So I think if it's not just because of the money, the most important thing is that if you feel comfortable with that person, and as Pablo said, that you align to some extent with your with your ambitions mainly.
You just added more things out of what I've said, not only the vision. You have to be friend with the investor at the early stage, be your code, open your horizon, have the same strategy. Guys, if it's about only the money, then he has to be a sleeping investor, as Mike just said. Just send them an email, give them a report twice a year or once a year, and don't take your eyes of your goals, just follow. You have to do the job there.
But Pablo, don't you think though that sometimes that can't be the case? I mean, somebody is giving you their money, they might say like, I want to be involved. So it's like, I understand like what Mike said, like if you just definitely need the cash injection, you're going to take it and play by somebody's rules. But then I don't know how respectful or disrespectful one can be by taking somebody's money and saying, you know what, you're going to be like a dormant investor, like, don't bother me, I need to work on that. So especially if they want to be involved. So how do you handle that?
then it must be very clear from the early beginning, before even getting their money, that you have the same vision, that you have the own beliefs, philosophy, roadmap, business plan, understanding, chemistry, communication, and then take their money. Mm-hmm. So try to be, and it's very important. Us as investors will try to make this clear, because it's going to be win-win situation. We try to avoid the lose-lose situation.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, so as a final wrap-up, our friend Christos in the audience was asking the steps that somebody with an idea needs to take, and every one of you, let's say, at which point of the cycle of that idea comes in. So I'm gonna circle back to you, Mike, which was actually the opening question of your first experience. And now that you are wiser, how would you place every key player of the path of the startup? And then Pavlos, you're gonna wrap it up on what you're expecting finally from the startups in front of you when they arrive.
Okay, so I mean, my 50p is that, first of all, if your skin is not in the game, then don't do it. If you're not willing to devote 110% of your life in what you're about to do, that's a first indication that you're not ready, not even remotely, to even talk to investors, because they won't invest in your company if you're not investing your time in this whole thing. Secondly, you really, really need to crawl, get in the mat, drag the good name of yours in the mat, just to prove to everyone that whatever your idea is has some sort of validity in the market, in whatever market you're tapping into. Whether you got some award somewhere, or whether someone, if let's say you're in fintech, then someone from HSBC picked up the phone at least and they responded to your email. That's a good, first point, that maybe you caught someone's eye within such a respectable organization. It could also be the case that you need to have at least one co-founder, and especially if you're a tech company, that knows his way around tech. If none of the two founders are tech related, even remotely, then you have no chance of sitting in front of an investor. So if you take these three fundamentals, so value, credibility, a solid co-founding team in place, and your absolute commitment in the game, then you're ready to go and speak to investor. From then on, it's up to your hustling, it's up to your passion, it's up to your vision, your mission, your product, and so on and so forth.
Do you believe the accelerator or the incubator comes after you've done everything you said, and you stood in front of an investor and maybe got shut down a bit, or maybe they told you like you're not ready yet? Or is it, okay, idea, validation, getting into the acceleration, and then talking to investors?
Look, again, if the initial 3 points I mentioned are all ticked, then perseverance and being shut down, it's part of our job description. You need to hear no's. If you don't hear no's, you've done something wrong. Like you need to constantly find ways to self-motivate yourself, because the more you self-motivate yourself, the better you become. And the more you acknowledge what you might have done as a mistake in your previous conversation with an investor, then you get better. And then by the 5th, 6th, 10th investor you talk to, you already know all the questions, you already know how to answer them. And I guarantee the experience will be much better and a much better discussion versus the very first discussion you had with your first investor. Now, so basically, what needs to happen basically is that you should make sure that everything that you say, everything that you do are actually backed up with evidence and with numbers, so you're not caught as a liar, because that's a huge red flag. And whether you're gonna choose to go down the path of an accelerator or an angel or an incubator, that all boils down, I think, to your immediate network and what kind of opportunities will come in front of you. If you don't have enough investors in front of you, then you will be forced to go to an accelerator. If you don't have enough accelerator or investors, you'll be forced to go to friends and family, and so on and so forth. But perseverance, keep digging, keep searching, keep pushing, spend hours and weeks within LinkedIn, reach out, manage your community, and see what you can get out of it, and it will happen. It's meant to happen. as I always say, I hate to say that everything happens for a reason. I'm not a firm believer of that. I think you make your own luck. The more you work.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So Pablo?
Just to add, you covered me 100%. Just to add some things. First of all, even if you fail in front of an investor, you said it and I said it every time, okay, you're prepared, let's say you've been with a code, you've been in an accelerator and you go in front of an investor and you get a no. Use it as a learning curve. Build on that. Never stop fighting. I said many no's, especially guys and try to coach them. After I was saying no to them, never stop learning. And when you go to the investors, it's a learning curve. You said it, Mike, that's the most wise thing we can say to young people. The investor is coming at the end. And believe me, you were going to fail during the process until you go to the investor. Maybe you will fail with the accelerator. Maybe you will fail with the beginning of your ideas. Fail. Failure is a good thing as long as you stand up, continue believing in your dreams, keep working and learning from the failures and the mistakes. Then the future is yours. That's what I believe.
I do believe that as well. I believe that in Cyprus, we don't talk about failure a lot. That's why people are still afraid to fail. But hopefully this will be changing. So last question for both. Where can somebody reach out to both of you, let's say? So where do you mostly live online?
Recently, I'm a huge fan of Clubhouse. So if anyone wants to have a chat, they can reach out. We can chat. It's always really cool. LinkedIn. I'm not the most responsive these days, but it's a good place to find me. I don't have a Facebook because it stands against my ethics in the tech world. And I'm not sure. Are we allowed to share emails in this discussion?
No, don't share it now. But well, where do you, let's say, live online, so people can reach out to network?
I live on Earth in Nicosia and Trollos area. I don't have a Facebook. I'm not a fan of Facebook. I have an Instagram, but I use it just once a year. Of course, I have an email. Of course, I use Zoom and Skype. Of course, I have a mobile phone. So you can find me through I can give my email. I can talk to people, anytime in many of the seminars we're doing or whatever, but I'm not that much online guy,
Okay. So for everybody in the audience, where to reach out to our speakers and ask, follow-up questions or more about their story. So if you, because we have also GDPR, we're not sharing your emails, but you need to give Marios, that is joining us back on stage right now, for the okay to share your email for people that they want to talk. So on my behalf, I want to talk to you guys. It was having a great discussion with you. I wish we could do it more. I know you're very time strained and that you already more time that you already had to give. So thank you so much for your time. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Andrea, very much.
You made it super
easy. As well.
Pleasure, Pablo's pleasure.
Well, many thanks, guys. Many thanks for again accepting our invitation, and many thanks for the very fruitful. It was an amazing discussion, and I personally received some comments on my. I mean, unlikely the panelists. I use Facebook, and I did receive a couple of messages regarding the quality of the event and regarding the quality of the panel, actually.
That's why we have you there, Mario. That's why we have you there. You are our online Perfect.
guy.
It did. So one completes the other, and that's how an ecosystem works, right?
And a team.
Indeed. Well, again, many thanks for the amazing discussion, guys. I would like to also thank the attendees that were with us tonight. I saw a couple of amazing questions that you answered. And what I would like to say is that today was the first event of the trilogy. So for the next 2 Thursdays, we've got 2 more events. Accelerating the local ecosystem. Not sure if there's anything else I wanted to say before I say goodnight to everyone. But yeah, join us at the next event. And I think that's a wrap. I think that's a wrap.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Perfect, guys. Pleasure.
Bye-bye. Mike, thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye. Bye.